Welcome everyone, I'm your host Dr. Ángel Velázquez and this is Sports Medicine and Béisbol. Today, I had no plans to be talking about any type of injury or any type of podcast, and the news came that the New York Mets signed Bo Bichette. And actually, I was jumping up and down my chair because even when I was praying that we got Pete Alonso, when Pete left, the first guy that came on my head was actually Bo Bichette. And I was thinking about this for a long time until this just happened. And I cannot be more excited. But in sports medicine and baseball, we dissect sports medicine injury and we fuse sports medicine with baseball. So we're going to be talking about his injury. What happened back in September 6th in a collision home plate in a games against the Yankees, and how he was able to come back for the World Series and have a fantastic series at the plate. But we'll talk about his limitation while running through the bases that actually was one of the big deals at his World Series because he could not score from second to home plate in a 7 decision game in a World Series. So stay with us. Let's talk about Bo Bichette, how excited I am, and let's talk about his injury last year and how this could have any issues or not next year with the New York Mets. Welcome back to Sports Medicine and Baseball. And one thing that we cannot deny is that Bo Bichette is an elite hitter. And actually, if you look at his number, he's a career 294. His strikeouts has been going down from 137 to 155, 115, 64, and 91 last year. So his average has been consistency and or constant, but his strikeout rate is being going down. So definitely it is a guy that you want on your team. And it's a guy that I'm so happy that the Mets got. But obviously, things come with risk. And he had an injury last year on September 6th. There was a base hit to right field, and there was a throw on home plate, and a collision happened. And Bo Bichette had a collision with a catcher knee to knee. And actually, now you can see that video really fast how he was coming at full speed and ended with the left knee flexed and hit it directly into the catcher right knee. And this other video that I'm posting right now, and I'm showing right now, it is actually showing in slow motion how that left knee was bended with the collision in the home plate with the catcher. And, we start looking back and say, hey, what exactly happened? Well, he missed a month and a half, and he was able to come back in a World Series. And I will tell you something. Being there, we know that when the playoffs are going, the lights go on. And you have to try to do your best to come back because you never know if this is the first, this time, but maybe the last time that you're going to be in the World Series. So he did his best. He was able to come back and took him a month and a half. But before we go into all that, let's talk about this injury and what exactly was the diagnosis. So articles came back and say that he had a PCL or posterior cruciate ligament injury. And that's one of the main ligaments on the knee. And the mechanism of injury is exactly how you see on that video, where the knee is flexed and hit directly to an object, or the dashboard of a car when you have a car accident, or hit the ground when you are a lineman in football, or in this case, hit the catcher gears on the knee and had a significant injury or sprain to his PCL. And these PCL injuries are not dangerous most of the time. Most of the time, with some physical therapy, with some anti-inflammatories, with some exercise program and time, the players are able to come back. Rarely, they require surgery. Most of the time, they don't. So this injury that he had was lucky enough to be one of the important ligaments of the knee, but not the ACL. Because a difference is that the ACL, it is one of those ligaments that help with rotation and stability of the knee. The PCL has some rotation and stability, but the ACL is more. And you can see in this video the anatomy of the knee. First, you're going to see that the knee, anterior cruciate ligament and posterior cruciate ligament, they work close to each other. Here you can see where the ACL is coming from the proximal aspect of the knee, that is the femur, to the anterior aspect of the tibia. That's where the ACL inserts. And the PCL, it is a little bit different. And the ACL, it is helping the knee to minimize that anterior motion of the tibia going forward on relation to the femur. Then you can see that the PCL is coming from the distal aspect of the femur to the posterior aspect of the tibia, and what it's going to do is minimize that posterior translation or the tibia coming backwards. And when the knee is flexed and you hit an object, so you got the knee flexed, you hit the object, that knee or that tibia go backward, causing a stretch of that PCL. And that's exactly what happened in this injury. So first, how this injury happened, it is important to understand, because when I was looking for exactly what happened to him, I find some articles about him having an LCL injury. And actually, the LCL injury was on the other knee several years ago, where he had an injury on August of 2023, and he was able to come back from the LCL injury several weeks later. Took him almost 4 weeks to come back, and that's really typical for this type of injury. But I realized watching the video that the LCL injury that we're talking about was one, or a mistake, or two, was on another injury, and actually it was exactly that what happened. Now that we talk about how the injury happened, let's talk about how this injury is diagnosed. Number one, physical exam is really important, because as soon as that you do a physical exam, you're going to realize if this ligament is loose or not. And you know, when this injury happened on the plate or any other time, you always worry about the ACL, right? So you worry about the ACL. So when you do this exam, you check your ACL, you check your collateral ligaments, there are the ligament on the side of the knee, and then you check the PCL with some what is called posterior drawer. And that posterior drawer is going to be loose. Depending the degree or the grade of this injury is how loose this knee is going to be. And the other thing that you look at, especially if you see them several minutes or even hours after, is looking for swelling on the knee. So the patient or the player is going to have swelling on the knee, decreased range of motion, and laxity with that posterior drawer. That is the reason why they were thinking about PCL injury. And the test of choice is actually an MRI. So you can get x-rays to be sure there's no fracture, but an MRI is the one that is going to tell us if there is an injury to this ligament or not. And then after the diagnosis is made, then you need to make a decision about if the player continue playing through the injury or the player needs some time off. And in this case, he has to go to the injury list, because the type of ligament injury that he had was unstable, looks enough to be able to rehab. And maybe he didn't have a significant instability, but definitely the swelling, the pain, decreased range of motion, all those things you need to work to be able to get him back into the game. And took him almost a month and a half. And what time he had when he came back. He came back to that World Series and he hit 348 with 6 RBIs, and he hit that homer in that 7th game in the World Series, and he looks great. But his defense was limited because of range of motion. His base running ability was limited because of his injury and his range of motion, and probably the discomfort that he still had, because he was able to come back a month and a half, but he wasn't the same player. He wasn't able to play a position as a shortstop. He was moved to second base to be able to be on the lineup and to be able to produce, but at the same time, he was some type of liability. In that game 7, he could not score from second base to home plate with a base hit. And definitely that was talk before the game. That was the game plan for sure. He was able to probably go or stretch from one base to the other one, advance with a base hit, but if the ball was in the gap, he was able to go and run around and then go to the next base. But his limitation was there. And that's something that now we look back and we say, what if he wasn't injured? What if he was able to be 100%? But we can think about that, right? We need to start thinking about the moment. And now the moment is that the New York Mets got their man. And what this remind me is guys like Eugenio Suarez were shortstop, and they moved to third base. Manny Machado, and look, other guys that were able to move like Carlos Correa. What kind of careers they have. And I think that Bo Bichette, that is going to be in March, 28 years old with 7 years in the major league. Think about that. 28 years old, and he's already been there for so long. And we think that he's a veteran, but he's on his prime. And that 3 years, $126 million contract with multiple opt-out options. It is going to be something that if he get a good year, you know what is going to happen at the end of this year. He's going to opt out and he's going to try to go and get a bigger contract or longer contract like other players have done, especially this off season. So it is good to have him. It is good to be able to enjoy. He's probably going to be a great defensive third base. He's probably going to cover a lot of ground. But we have to see what happened this year. If there's any linger issues from the injury that he had before. And typically, these PCL tears or sprain, they do well. Players are able to strengthen their quadricep and work on their flexibility and work on the inflammation. And with time, this injury and they heal well. Most of the time, they heal well without surgery. And that's what we're thinking that will happen with Bo Bichette. And, right now, he is probably going through a battery of testing with MRIs, X-rays, and look at that ligament really well with a good physical exam. And I remember when my time in Cincinnati that we were doing physical on these guys. We need to look on a different angles. We have our physical therapists do a full range of motion evaluation with the athletic trainers. We got strengthening, and then we got those numbers, and we got an exam. And before we actually go and see this guy, we look at those numbers to be sure that we double check and that we are addressing some of the lack of strengthening or lack of flexibility that these players have. So he's definitely have a group of medical personnel right now working with him to be sure that he is ready for what is coming in spring training and the beginning of this 2026 season. So really exciting news for a New York Mets. I'm really excited for Bo Bichette too. And I believe that he's going to do really well. That infield is going to be fantastic with Seaman, with obviously Francisco Lindor, with Bo Bichette on third base, and whoever we have on first base, if it's Polanco, or is Brad Betty or Mark Vientos playing and spending time between the DH and first base. This is going to be a fantastic year. I'm really excited. And hopefully his injury is something that is not going to linger, as I expect not to linger. And we should enjoy this next 2026 season. So this was a short video about these injuries. And I hope that you guys enjoy it. And I hope that you guys understand a little bit more the excitement that I have about Bo Bichette. And I think he's going to be having a monster year, looking for trying to get more money next year. If he do really well, I'm assuming that he will opt out like most of these players are doing this time. But for a Sports Medicine and Béisbol, this is all what we have today. I hope that you guys enjoy it. If you did, please subscribe and like this episode. Let's see you next time.